off by saying we are so excited to have you all here today. I think I speak for all student affairs professionals at JMU when I say we really miss you all. And so just feeling like we're gathering with you all, even in a virtual sense, is really encouraging. So we hope that you can grab a beverage and join us for this registration conversation. So even though we are all dispersed, we wanted to make sure that you all feel equipped and prepared to enter into registration next week, ready, that you feel that you know what you need to do to enter that time in well. And so that is why we created this webinar. This webinar is going to be geared specifically towards first-year students here at JMU right now that are preparing for their second year. We might focus a little bit on undeclared students, but honestly, if you are going to be entering into registration next week or ever at JMU, this will be helpful and you can glean a lot of stuff from it. The format of this webinar is going to be, for the first 15 minutes or so, we are going to give you our top 5 tips to engage in registration and to help you prepare for it. We will be talking to you during this time, so we would encourage you to take some notes. So grab some stuff for that. Additionally, we are going to have a link that you can download that's a resource to help you prepare for your registration specifically. That resource was created by Brandy Sumney in our office, and it is amazing, and so we are so grateful for her for creating that. The second section of this is going to be a live Q&A. We know that you all have your own individual questions, and so we want to make sure that you have a time to engage with us and ask these questions, especially the questions that you think would be beneficial for any person registering. We know that you all probably may have some things that you're worried about specifically with your schedule. And those questions are really great to ask your advisor one-on-one. But if you think that you have something that would benefit all students registering, please ask those questions in the chat and we will spend the majority of our time getting to those things. So yeah, without further ado, I'm gonna hand it back to Lindsay to start us off with our tips.
All right, thanks, Erin. So we're going to kick it off with our first tip to rock registration. And that first tip is to either have your major declared or have 1 to 2 options that you would like to explore. Having majors in mind is going to be super helpful in thinking about how to plan your schedule and what foundation do you need to have. Certain programs have foundational classes that you need to take early on in the major in order to progress in that major. And so that's going to be really important to focus and key in on as you're starting this process. If you have questions about classes and requirements for certain majors, check out the undergraduate catalog. It's going to be a great place to reference, not only for majors that you're interested in and doing your research there, but also minors in any other programs of interest. Also, make sure to check on restrictions for classes. So you'll see this in My Madison. We'll go to the next slide so you can kind of visualize what this looks like. But certain programs have classes specifically for students in those programs. So for example, Chem 131 is a restricted class only to bio, health sciences, and chemistry majors. So as you're planning your course schedule, looking at different classes, make sure you're keying in on those restrictions just to make sure that you're still in the clear for taking those classes. Also, if you're stuck between 2 or 3 majors and you're still in that decision-making process, see if there are any common classes amongst those majors that you're interested in. This could be, for an example, let's say maybe you're interested in international affairs and public policy. You do your research and you find that both programs have Econ 200 as a common class that you would need to take. Also, this is pretty lucky, Econ 200 is also a Cluster 4 general education class. So it might make sense to go ahead and take Econ 200 knowing that you at least knock out a gen ed, but you would also be able to satisfy some requirements for other programs if you're still deciding. And know that it's okay to be in that deciding phase, but we do have some resources to help you out that are new to career and academic planning. And so that's our Decision-Making 101 resource. You can see this is that homepage there now where there are videos as well as self-assessments and other things to walk you through wherever you are in that decision-making process to help you kind of narrow down those options for you. And then always feel free to talk to your advisor about your interests, your skills, and your values and how they might connect to some of the majors that you're interested in. So tip 2 is to know your registration time and be ready to go. This is really key in that planning process. And so to find your registration time, you're going to want to log on to My Madison and navigate to your student center. And in the bottom right-hand corner of your screen, you're going to see enrollment dates. And right now, what we're seeing on our screen is, this is our summer session. So you're going to want to click on details to be able to find out, what is my fall registration date and time? And so once you click on fall, it'll take you to that registration date and time for the fall semester to be able to plan. So you're going to want to put this date and time in your planner, wherever you're going to remember, so that you know exactly when you have to jump on My Madison and log on to be able to get access to your classes and be able to register. Now, also knowing this is going to be really helpful in your planning phase. So I'm going to turn it over to Erin to talk about, how do I plan for my registration time?
Absolutely. Thank you, Lindsay. So we are on tip 3 now. And so tip 3 is plan your schedule. This step can be kind of like the step where people get kind of confused and like clunky and they don't know exactly how to move forward. And so we're going to help you break this down into different chunks by telling you what to prioritize. So the first thing that I'm going to tell you is, as we walk through this, I'm going to act as if I am a student, first-year student, who is declaring health sciences or is interested in health sciences, and how I would kind of walk through how to make my schedule with that, okay? So the first thing that I'm going to do is look at the lower level major classes that I need to take for this major. So I'm not focusing on the 300 and 400 level classes in this major. I'm focusing on, what are those intro classes? What do I need to take really lower level to prepare me for those upper classes? So some examples of this in health sciences are like Health 100, Health 150, which is an introduction class to health sciences that you can't even get into those upper level classes if you don't have it, or even fully admitted into the major. Additionally, Chemistry 131 plus the lab, Math 220, Bio 270 and 290, all of these are classes that you need to take lower level, but even within them, they have progression standards. So you can't take 270 without first taking chemistry. Knowing this stuff is important to kind of tell yourself, okay, I need to take these classes first, or I can't move forward in my major. So focusing on those things is helpful, and making a list of those lower level major courses needed is important. The next thing that you want to do is focus on the gen eds that you have left to fulfill. So take that gen ed list planner and mark off the things that you have taken and passed, and only put the remaining left on this list. So for example, I've got a cluster 2, some cluster 3s, and also I'm gonna go get a BS, a Bachelor of Science. So I need to fulfill my quantitative reasoning requirement as well, okay? These things together are going to help me create my fall 2020 schedule, okay? So we are gonna jump ahead and see what that looks like. The next slide. So what I did is I took the classes that I absolutely need to take for my major first. We're focusing on major classes first. And so Health 150, like I said, it is essential that I get into that class and take it, because I can't do anything within my major until I'm in that class. Chemistry 131 in the lab and Math 220, both are also classes that really are going to be roadblocks for me if I don't take them early in being successful in other classes, or even getting admitted into those classes. So I need to get into all of these courses this semester. The good news is also that Chem 131 and Math 220 also help me fulfill other requirements. So Chem 131 is a cluster 3 physical principles, and the Math 220 helps me fill the BS quantitative reasoning requirement. So I'm double dipping, which is wonderful. So if I take these things, what you see is I have about 10 credits on my schedule right now with major classes. But to be a full-time student, you need to take a minimum of 12 credits. We usually advise students to take anywhere between like 14 and 17 credits per semester. So I want to get more on my calendar and on my schedule. And so what I'm going to do is I'm going to now look at my gen eds that I have left. Again, if I take a literature or a natural systems, what I might see is that I don't get like as many credits. And so I'm going to choose to take my cluster 4 American experience, because I know those classes are 4 credits each. So that'll bump me up to 14 credits for the semester, which is ultimately what I'm kind of trying to get to, okay? So if you look and see my American experience and I put all this together, I get to make a schedule now. And so what you want to do when you make this schedule is you want to go into My Madison and you're going to type these classes in, okay? I want Health 150. And each class you're going to do this for, and it's going to give you all the times and dates that this class is offered, the different professors, and the different locations. And you're going to take all that information and start to develop a schedule. Some resources that we would have or advise you to use would be something like the schedule planner. This is an amazing resource provided by the registrar's office that allows you to choose the classes you want and generates numerous different possibilities for you. You can even go in and pin classes that you're like, nope, this one is the most important. I have to have that. And it'll rotate things around for you. It is wonderful. So definitely use that resource. Another resource that we want to encourage you to use is, can I get there on time? If you have a class that you're scheduling back to each other and one's on East Campus and one's on the Bluestone, you might not be able to get there on time. And so that document is very helpful for you to assess that. And then if all comes down to it and you just want to create a paper schedule and write it out, this is kind of how I like to function. Go for that. And that really works too. Adding these classes to your shopping cart as you see them, you can do that as well. It's also important for us to kind of pause and realize that we know that one of the myths that students enter into college with is, hey, in college, you get to create your schedule however you want it. And that is true in some ways, but there are limitations to that as well. So you are going to have needs that you have for your semester that you have to get into. We'll talk about that a little bit more in the next tip. And then you're going to have wants. And so on this one, we're just going to give our wish list. And so our wish list is, I don't want a class before 10 a.m. I am not a morning person. I don't want a 10 a.m. Or earlier class. I don't want any classes on Friday because ultimately I want a 3-day weekend every week. And I have heard that Dr. Hall is an amazing Chemistry 131 professor and that he is really great at supporting his students. So I definitely want to take Dr. Hall as my chemistry professor. And so I go in and I search for all of my classes and I create my perfect schedule. That's a good thing. But the reality is that life happens and we have to be ready to make some changes, which leads us to tip number 4, which is be ready to pivot. If you're not ready to pivot, you are going to probably just be disappointed at registration and start to feel like you have to melt down. You don't. We're preparing for it, okay? So if you look back, this was our ideal schedule, okay? We created it. It is perfect. But when you go to register, these are the problems that you show up with. So History 225, which is the American Experience class that you said you wanted to take, only has 8 a.m.s on Monday, Wednesday, and Friday. And so you might want to consider looking at something different. So Political Science 225 fulfills the same cluster, okay? It's not needed for your major, but it's needed for your gen eds. So you have the ability to pivot there and to say, okay, I'm just gonna choose to take the Political Science 225 instead of the history. Fits my schedule better, it works well, fulfills the same cluster, check, done, okay? So you could say that. The next thing is that your chemistry professor, his later evening class was really popular, and so now he's only available on Tuesday, Thursdays at 8 a.m. And so you're having to make the choice of, do I want to take him at 8 a.m. or do I want to take a different section with a different professor at a later time? And so you're kind of wrestling with these choices. Let's go to the next slide and see our schedule. So what we did in this is we chose that we were going to not take History 225 because it just didn't fit a schedule as well, but we still wanted to do that American Experience Cluster 4 class. So we're taking Political Science instead, and that's going to work out really well with our schedule. Additionally, we chose that it was probably more important for us to be with a professor that we thought we would be really successful with and that we had heard great things for chemistry rather than not having an 8 a.m. So you got some of your wish list. You don't have any classes on Friday. You also get your professor that you preferred. However, you do have an 8 a.m. twice a week. That's okay. That's kind of making compromises and be ready that those things might happen, okay? It's important for you to prepare your heart for that. The one thing that you need to think about is as you do this, you're going to have a swap feature, which makes it easy to switch these classes. So say that our chemistry class that was on at 3 o'clock in the afternoon, you can't take it anymore. Well, you can go on My Madison, choose swap, add the class that you are going to now take, and it just switches them for you versus you having to recraft everything, which is really helpful. I want to touch back just a minute on these needs versus wants for our schedule. So when I say I need something, it means this is pretty essential to my academic progress that I fulfill this. For example, if I do not get into Health 150, it puts me a semester behind, okay? Which can impact my graduation date, which can impact a lot of different things. However, if I say that I want no 8 a.m.s, the reality is not having 8 a.m.s doesn't impact my academic record. I can take an 8 a.m., be successful, and I still am on progress and track to graduate. So it's really important that you understand the differences between what you need and what you want. What you need is this: to take the classes that are essential for the progression in your major and to make sure you have a minimum of 12 credits. That is what you need, okay? The rest of it is probably more wants. And so figure out where you can be flexible. You might have to do some priority arrangement. That's okay. But figure out where you can be flexible, okay? And the last thing that we got to tell you is this isn't permanent, which leads us to tip 5.
All right, y'all. So as Erin said, it's really important to remember that this isn't permanent. So if you're a current first-year student, you'll most likely begin to register next week. Especially if you're a first-year student, you probably have an enrollment time on Thursday, April 16th, sometime during the day. And Lindsay, she showed you what that looks like a little bit earlier. If you are an incoming first-year student, then you have the option to enroll in mid-June. And so there will be another webinar kind of closer to the enrollment time that, talks through how to specifically enroll. But just so you know, that's when the enrollment time will be, again, in mid-June. And you'll have an advisor assigned to you at that particular time. So for our current first-year students, it's really, really important, and for our incoming students, once you register for a schedule, always remember it's not set in stone. You can always adjust things. I'm going to speak directly to our current first-year students right now. April 16th is when you're going to start registration. It's open until May 22nd, and then it opens back up again in August. And so you have until the end of the first week of classes in order to adjust your schedule. And so just make sure that, as Erin said, you have that list of things that you want versus the things that you need, and then you keep adjusting your schedule, always keeping in mind the things that you need first, and then adjust it to get the things that you want as possible. So at this time, we are going to open it up to questions. There's already been a couple questions that have come through the chat. So we're going to start with those. And then I would invite you to keep asking questions through the chat, and we'll do our best to get through all of them. So it looks like our first question is, what do I do if I forgot to send in my transcript with my dual enrollment questions? Erin or Lindsay, which one do you want to take?
I don't mind taking it. So if you still need to send in your dual enrollment credits, you're still able to do that through the JMU registrar. You're still able to do that and get credit for those. And Erin or Amy, if you have other things to piggyback on that.
I would just say, to add on to that, if you are planning your schedule and you're worried, is the registrar going to be able to process that credit in time for it to show up on my transcripts? We have a lot of resources where you can literally go look and say, okay, I took English 111 at this community college or in high school. Well, that equals WRTC 103 here at JMU. And so you can use those guides. If you just Google JMU transfer credit, we have a great resource that helps you with that. And so even if you can't get all of that processed in time, that can help you prepare.
And definitely make sure you let your advisor know that you have that transfer credit pending. Looks like there's a question from Megan about if there's a way to see the class size, specifically if they would prefer a smaller class. Is there a way to look at that before you register?
Yes. So when you go onto My Madison, it'll tell you everything about the class, including the class size. So it'll say like maximum capacity, which shows you that's how many seats are in that class. And so if you see ones of, like on some of your classes, you might see 300. But if you see ones that are more like 50 or 30, those are going to be your smaller level. And so you can look through different sections to see if there's different sizes of classes available.
And just to piggyback off that, Erin, to be able to find that, click on the section number. So you'll see a small or like a brief description of the class and kind of as you search, but you're going to want to click on that section number to be able to find that number of seats in the class.
We have a question from Frank about, I'm going in undeclared into my second year. Can I take another full year of general education, or how do I start looking at major classes?
That's a great question, Frank. So at JMU, you are required to select your major by the 3rd week of your sophomore year, okay? So you can't take another full year of gen ed classes. Also, you'll run out of gen ed classes to take. And so what we really encourage students to do, you're not required again until the 3rd week of your sophomore year, but we really encourage students to at least have narrowed it down to 1 or 2 majors you want to dive into and research to be able to make sure that you are making the most of that sophomore year, especially that first semester. Because if you don't have an idea of where you want to go to explore, you might find that you're just trying to piece together classes that aren't as meaningful to you as you're progressing through your academic progress, honestly. And so it's okay to not declare, but if you can choose 1, 2, or even 3 majors, look at the classes that you can take within those, pepper those in with your gen eds so that you can start to be like, okay, I really do like this public policy class, or I really do like this economics class. That's great. So start working towards that. I'm going to give you a little tip and trick with this. If there's a major that you are strongly considering, let's say public policy, okay? Let's say you're really strongly considering public policy. Well, you might actually have to declare public policy to get into that intro class to be able to explore it. That's okay. Majors can be changed. Don't panic, okay? So if you need to declare that to get into that, even if you want to declare a minor to be able to take another class to explore, that's okay. Nothing is permanent here. But it is good for you to have some general direction rather than just being like, I'm just gonna continue to take gen eds.
All right, we got a question from Jessica about honor students and how enrollment times are chosen. Lindsay, you wanna take this one? Or Erin, either one?
Erin, are you familiar with honor students?
Yes, so honor students have early registration time slots. And so your registration opens up, Amy, is it April, what is it? Is it this Friday?
So I believe that honor students, for current students, for the registration time, they get to register a little earlier in the day than current students. But for new students, they get to register a day before the other students. If our current students are listening, if they are registered with our Office of Disability Services, or if they're a student athlete, then they get to register on this Friday.
Okay, perfect. Thanks,
Awesome.
Amy.
Thank you.
We have another question from an individual about incoming first-year students. How would math or language placement tests affect any classes that you could take?
So for my knowledge, both will impact. So you'll be able to use the scores that you have on your math placement tests to be able to determine what classes or what math you place into. And similarly to foreign language, if you're pursuing a Bachelor of Arts, it's going to be really important to clue in on that foreign language placement test results to be able to know where you should start in the progression of foreign languages.
I want to just kind of jump in on that one. Like Lindsay said, she did great with foreign languages and everything. The only thing I want to add for your math is that math is something that is very often necessary for the progression of different majors. So for example, College of Business has a math progressions, health science has maths that you need to take. Honestly, a lot of them do. So if you have an idea of the different majors, I know you're undecided potentially or exploratory, that's great, that's totally fine. But having an idea will help us understand, okay, you are trying to get to calculus, so we don't need you to take the elementary statistics because we need you to get to the calculus part of it. And so that's totally fine. But if you can have a little bit of an idea, potentially maybe of where you want to go, we can help you gain maybe the first step in block before you get to that final goal.
Great question.
All right, we got another question from a parent. Can my daughter be planning for her schedule now? She'll be in the College of Behavioral Health and planning to major in nursing later on. What advice do you have for her to start looking at prereqs or general education courses now?
So is this for a student like class of 2024?
Yes.
Okay. So yes, you can definitely start somewhat planning. You're probably not going to have as solid of like this class will be offered at this time on Tuesday, Thursday, whatnot. That'll open up later. But we have really great resources that allow you to kind of see like, okay, as a nursing major, these are the classes you need to take immediately. And so you'll need to get into, here's an example, you would need to get into like a chemistry course, you would need to get into certain things. And so you can have this idea of, I know these are the classes I need to take from those worksheets. And so you can just Google JMU nursing registration worksheet, and it usually can lead you to that and give you really great. We also would encourage you to reach out to their advisor when the time comes to just talk to them about specifics within the nursing major. They could potentially tell you like, this is a section that we would encourage you to take, or even just give you like, hey, I wouldn't take these two classes together because they're both really challenging or whatnot. And so reaching out to them can be very helpful.
And something else I would just kind of add to that for folks who are incoming first year students, so who may have just decided on JMU as their institution, keep an eye out for the one book. That's going to be coming in the mail, and you'll also have some online resources there as well. And that's going to help walk you through the steps that you need to be prepared for things like the placement exams, and thinking through what are the steps I need to take in progression to be able to get here on campus for the fall.
I just want to reiterate that if you are an incoming student for the class of 2024, welcome. We're so excited to have you. Just like I said a little earlier, you all will be getting your enrollment date in early June, and you all will be enrolling in mid-June. And so this is helpful information, just like the question just asked about kind of how to start preparing, looking at those resources like Lindsay mentioned in the one book, and Aaron was talking about the enrollment worksheets and things. But you will be enrolling in mid-June. So that is when your enrollment date will be posted. So that's coming up shorter than we were prepared. So there's another question about, I'm currently undecided, but interested in music education. How would I go about changing major from undecided to music education?
So something to think about, and certainly jump in, Amy and Aaron, but for music education, that is a program that does have a requirement for an audition. And so something I would advise is to go ahead and reach out to, depending on your instrument, reach out to a professor in that program for music education or the head of that department to be able to talk about what that might look like. And I know at this point, since we're all remote, those auditions are going to look a little bit different just because we are remote. And so I would say, yes, absolutely reach out to the head of the music education department to see how they're running auditions, and then reach out to that particular instrument or voice professor to kind of see how things are progressing. Amy or Aaron, anything to add there?
If your student has already been accepted to the School of Music, then they actually declare the music education major their second year. And so they'll progress in the education, or the music They'll progress in the music curriculum for their first year and a half, and then they'll apply directly to the music education program, and then they'll start those secret classes at that time.
I just want to add that, you know, we're talking specifically about music education, but honestly, this kind of applies to a lot of different majors that have like audition or portfolio reviews. If you are considering, especially if you're a current first year student progressing into your sophomore year, if you are considering wanting to go into an art or music, theater, visual and performing arts, or anything like that that has like a portfolio submission or an audition or anything, my advice would be go ahead and start scheduling that audition, even if you might not decide to move forward with that major. Okay, but you need to be able to at least have that audition, that portfolio submitted to give you like teeth if that is where you go, because you don't want to keep putting it off and not be able to progress forward. And so, yeah, my biggest advice would be to go ahead and start scheduling those things if possible.
We had another great question about how many years of foreign language or how many classes of foreign language are required for a student majoring in history.
Lindsay, do you want it?
You go for it, Erin.
Okay, so history, remind me of this, somebody who can get on Google real quick. It's a BA.
It's only a BA, yep.
Perfect. Okay. So a lot of them you can decide. So I wanted to clarify BA. So for our foreign language BA requirements, you have to take 4 semesters of a language. However, you could take that foreign language test and place into level 2. So then you only have to take 3 semesters, or you could place into level 3. I've had students actually completely place out of their foreign languages, so they get all of that covered. So you will, traditionally, if you come in with no foreign language experience or you just test to the lower level, you'll be taking 4 semesters. That can change according to where you place.
All right, I've got a really great question about, will more seats open up after initial registration?
Lindsay, do you want to take it?
I might defer to you for this one as well, if you don't mind.
No, that's totally fine. So more seats could open up after registration. So what happens is a lot of times we hold seats so that incoming students can have classes that they can take as well, whether it's for general education or whatnot, because we really need to make sure those students have classes that they need to take. What can happen is once a registration opens up again after incoming students have registered and everything, you might see some extra seats come available. Also, students are just changing their schedules so much that you're going to see seats kind of come and go. For example, if I decide like, never mind, I don't want to take that chemistry, I could drop that course and all of a sudden there's another seat available. Okay, so sometimes we will add seats and sometimes we ultimately, you'll just see it because people are changing their schedules. So constantly be checking, especially if there's a class that you really want and there wasn't a wait list or anything, just make sure that you keep checking to see if it's available.
Got a question from Francis. What happens if I forgot to take a Cluster 1 course? And for those of you who are turning in as incoming students, Cluster 1 is our communications, critical thinking course, and our writing courses, and that's the only cluster of our general education program that you have to finish by the end of your first year.
And so if you haven't gone ahead and finished those classes yet, I would advise to go ahead and maybe think about and consider some summer classes. I know JMU, at least at this point, is opening those up and that registration is already happening. So take a look at what is available for online WRTC or any of those Cluster 1 courses to be able to get those knocked out. If not, there might be a possibility of taking it that first semester of your sophomore year, but those classes are still reserved for students in a particular kind of zone of credits. And so if you are already taking enough credits to get out of that zone, it might be a little more tricky to try to get you into that class. So really to kind of play it on the safe side, try to go ahead and get that knocked out over the summer just to have a clean slate going into sophomore year.
All right. So questions are kind of slowing down a little bit. We do have a couple more, but just as a reiteration, if you all have any questions, please feel free to ask them. This is another question from Julia. I want to start my sequence in a foreign language this semester, but I never took the foreign language placement test. What do I do?
take the foreign language placement test. So you can just take it online. If you just Google JMU foreign language placement test, you just take it online. You can take it exactly from your home. And that way you can see where you're going to place. I think it might take a couple of days to get back to you on where you're going to place. It might not actually, it might be automated, but I think it does take a little bit of time. But yeah, take it wherever you need.
And how can they find that placement test?
Google. So I'm going to say Google.
That's what I do.
Which placement test, and it'll just pull up it'll pull up a web page and then lead you to the link to take it. For sure.
Great. So got a question. How do I know which general education courses are most appropriate for me? Is there a good way to select them?
That's a good question. I would say that, so this is somewhat of a catch-22 with this one. So I would encourage you not to select, I only want to take this general education course. So like, no, I really like poetry. I don't plan on being an English major, but I really like poetry and I'm only going to take poetry. I think it's okay to say that for some, like, no, I really want to take econ because I'm interested in the College of Business and I want to see if that's going to be something I want. Great. But for the most part, if you can have some flexibility with those classes, it's really helpful when planning your schedule. The classes that you can say, hey, is this class going to be a good fit for me? Especially when it comes to your math, looking at your math placement scores, when it comes to like your cluster 3 with your sciences and stuff, like if you are not interested in chemistries or health sciences, or you don't care to go down that route, well, maybe choose something more like your astrology that you might enjoy a little bit better. And so it's okay to kind of say like, hey, what do I feel like really strong at? And where do I feel like I could succeed? But also understand like that needs a little bit of flexibility, and also challenge yourself. I had somebody who didn't want to take anything from the natural systems, ended up taking biological anthropology. And we actually had a conversation this morning. She was like, it's my favorite class. I love it. And it's kind of deterred where she's actually going to go with her major a little bit. And so be willing to like stretch yourself and try new things, but also evaluate your strengths and where you think you'll be good.
We've got a question from Kate. I'm still not sure what I want to major in, but I came into JMU with a lot of credits and I'm running out of Gen Ed courses to take in the fall. What should I do?
So a great first step is to really think about exploring. We were talking earlier about some decision-making resources. And so kind of get to know a little bit more about what are your interests and what are some of those things that might kind of lean you to at least maybe an area of majors. So that's kind of one thing to maybe think about, is continuing that exploration, seeing what's out there and what kind of matches your interests, and always feel free to reach out to an advisor to kind of play off and be able to talk through kind of how that looks for you.
I completely echo and agree with that. I really want to emphasize the talk to your advisor. We can kind of maybe help you a little bit. We also have a contact that only we can contact them for students with high credit, that we can kind of go, hey, like what can we do here to make this a meaningful experience for them? So definitely reach out to us and let us know how we can help you with that.
All right, we've got a question from Jody. How many courses or credits do most students take per semester? Is there a minimum or a maximum number, and is tuition varied based on that?
This is such a good question.
That's a good question. Yeah, it's really important too.
So I feel like there's multiple different parts. So if I leave a part out, please reiterate that part, okay?
Okay.
So at the end of your time at JMU, you are required to have 120 credits to walk across that stage and graduate, okay? So how we kind of divide that up is normally that equals out to about 15 credits per semester if you're gonna be there for 4 years, okay? Sometimes you might take a little more and sometimes you might take a little less, but your average should be about 15. If you are finding, okay, I really am only comfortable at 12, okay, that's okay. Just understanding that could be adding some time on, or maybe you're needing to take summer classes or different things. We encourage students to take anywhere between 14 and 17, although 12 is what is required if you want to be a full-time student. Full-time students have usually the most financial aid support. If you drop under that 12 credits, sometimes there can be some challenges with financial aid. And so we don't really work with that, but we just know it's a challenge. So I would encourage you to talk to the financial aid office if you have questions about that. But with between 12 and 18 credits, there is no cost difference. So some people look at that and are like, I'm taking 18 credits every single time because like that's milking the system and I get all this education, which is totally fine. Be careful not to overwhelm yourself. But yeah, between that 12 and 18, you don't have to worry about taking more credits or less, just you're all the same cost right there. Did I answer all parts of that question?
Yes, you did.
Yeah, okay.
All right, so we have a specific question to education. I'm going to pull in a secret guest judge who's lurking, Colleen Waller.
Hey,
so,
Colleen.
Thanks
I feel
for
like I'm behind door number 3.
thanks for joining us, Colleen. So this individual says that they are planning on doing the 5-year master's program for teaching. How can they find the requirements for a secondary education minor? So College of Education has gone through a lot of different changes this past couple of years. So Colleen, can you talk a little bit and answer the student's question?
Yeah, and actually, to be honest, my question is probably going to send you to the College of Education, because it really depends on whether you're talking about trying to finish and get your licensure in 4 years. You said the 5-year master's, they have a lot of different variation because of the great opportunities that they're giving students starting this year. So if you're with elementary education or secondary education, that also makes a difference. And so I would be happy to connect you with an education advisor just to make sure that we're getting you the best information possible. The catalog has been updated though, and that would be my starting point, is for you to look there, because the catalog, if you're a incoming 1920, sorry, if you're a first year this year, then going to that catalog, the educational programs have been updated in there, and you could look there for that as a starting point. And then I really highly recommend getting in touch with somebody at the College of Education. If you're having trouble locating who the best person for that would be, please feel free to email me. I'm available on the CAP website.
All right. Thanks again, Colleen. We appreciate that. All right. I've got a question about, can I add a minor at any point?
Yes. Except there's like a too early. So you can't add a minor. I don't actually know is it 2 weeks into your first year? You have to wait 2 weeks?
So actually, if you are an incoming first-year student, the first time that you can add a minor or a second major is the first day of classes. At that time, that's when the first time you can declare either of those two things, and you can do that through the My Madison system, but you have to wait until the first day of classes. So that is what Erin's talking about it being too early. Yeah.
Can you tell who like has all of the buckets of knowledge and is like the senior advisor? She is just full of wisdom and knowledge.
Oh, Erin, don't embarrass me. Okay, so another question. I have some more questions about exploration. Can you talk more about resources to help me look up different majors, career paths, etc.?
Absolutely. And so if you go to jmu.edu/cap, chock full of amazing resources. One of the first tabs is kind of that major and minor exploration tab, and it has so many great resources, all the way from steps for making your decision and doing the exploration process, all the way through to how do I go ahead and declare that major, and anything in between. And it has links to different snapshots of different majors and reading about them. So make sure to jump on the CAP website to be able to kind of go through that exploration. If you ever find you get to a place where you're like, oh my gosh, I'm getting a little overwhelmed, I need somebody to help sort this through with me, always feel free to reach out to an advisor. We're here to kind of help you navigate that process to know, okay, let's talk about it. Where are you right now? And what might be that piece of information that gets you to that next step? So always, we're here to help you navigate that process.
I do just have to say, like, we just created a new part of this as part of like the coronavirus and like wanting to enter in a new way. We created a digital resource for decision making that like has videos to kind of help you talk through things and decide like how you can process through things, because we know it can be overwhelming. And so this really helps you figure out where to start. And so I'm just really excited of that resource. And so definitely check it out. I think Amy put the link to it in the chat box.
Yes, I did. Thanks for that little shout out, Erin. Also in the chat box is, again, I'm going to highlight the resource that was mentioned at the beginning about just kind of a resource to help you look at general educations. That was done by one of our wonderful graduate assistants, Brandy. And then it also had the link that Lindsay just mentioned to our website. I just had a question. I'm ready to declare my major. Do I have to do this before I register, or is it okay to wait until later? And that was from Jennifer.
Thanks, Jennifer. So it's going to be really important, if you already have that major in mind, to go ahead and declare it, because by doing so triggers things in My Madison that might be able to open up certain classes to you. So certain majors have prerequisites or pieces that say, okay, I need you to be in this major to be able to take this class. So by going ahead and going into My Madison and declaring the major opens that process up for you.
Absolutely. Like think about Health 150 that we used in the example. Can't get into it unless you're a health science declared major. Chemistry 131, can't get into it unless you're in one of those specific majors. So definitely we're like going ahead and declaring is beneficial because those classes can be limited sometimes.
One other short plug, as you're going through the process of declaring in My Madison, be sure if there are any pop-up windows that happen that have information on them, read them very thoroughly and carefully, because they have very important steps that you might need to take to be able to go into kind of declaring that major and finishing out the process.
Absolutely. All right, I've got a question from Henry. Says that I heard a rumor that if you put classes in your shopping cart, it'll save you a seat in that class. Is that true?
No. That one
I wish it was.
I know.
I know. No, shopping cart is kind of like your shopping cart at the store. Until you buy it, it's not yours and it's not saving it. I mean, we hope nobody's reaching into your buggies in the store and like stealing your stuff, but technically when it comes to registration, that's exactly what people can do. So if you have something in your shopping cart, by the time you get there and it's your time to enroll, it could be gone. Just be aware of that. That's why we talked about that being ready to pivot is really important.
Okay. Got another question from a student that says, can I take classes this summer? And how can I make sure that they'll still count here at JMU?
You can absolutely take summer classes at JMU. Most of them are going to be online. And so just be aware of that. What was the second part of that question, Amy? I just want to make sure I caught that.
How can I make sure that I know that they'll count here at JMU?
So anything you take at JMU obviously will count for JMU. However, if you're thinking about community college, that's probably where that question was leading. If you're interested in taking a class through maybe a local community college, whether that's in the state of Virginia or outside the state of Virginia, I really use the registrar's tool that has these equivalency guides. And so it allows you to go on the equivalency guide to look up the classes for that community college and see how they transfer to JMU, to be able to double check, okay, this comes in as X at JMU. If I take this at community college, it will count for this. If you have questions though, feel free to reach out to the registrar. One step that I've encouraged my students to take is if they're looking at a community college, making sure to fill out, there's a form on the registrar's website that you need to send in to be able to confirm that that class gets transferred to JMU.
Absolutely. So I got a quick clarification. Is it better to take classes at my local community college or institution, or should I take them at JMU?
That's a great question. I think ultimately community college classes are usually pretty good and we accept them well. I would say that there are a couple of caveats to that. For example, like the College of Business is pretty particular about like college business classes coming from a business school with like a specific like accreditation. So College of Business classes you need to take pretty much in the College of Business. If you need to take your math, for the most part, we look at that as, okay, you have taken that math and it transfers and is this. that's kind of where I have seen it stand. I haven't seen, even with like nursing, if somebody comes in with like an anatomy credit, I haven't seen that it weights it differently or anything, which is kind of nice. But yeah, making sure that you, if you have specific questions about that though, I would encourage you to contact the department. Like if you were a nursing major that was like really worried about like, I took anatomy at community college and I just don't know if it's going to be adequate. Well, I would contact the nursing department if I had like further questions about that.
Exactly. And I think that's most especially important if you are planning to take a like an anatomy course and go to pre-professional school. Make sure that you touch base with your department. Question from Sonia. Found out that my dual enrollment class transfers as general elective credit, but what does that mean?
So what that means is on your transcript, you will receive it. So let's say you took a history, okay? Well, when you come in, it didn't transfer in as the history that counts for your gen eds. So it didn't transfer in as like history 101 or 102 or 225. Instead, it transferred in as history 000, which means we recognize that the rigor of that is equal to like college course rigor. And so we want to give you credit for it, but it doesn't equal one of our classes to help you strike through that as like a gen ed for fulfillment or even a major fulfillment. So it counts towards your final 120 credits, but not towards like the general education fulfillment credits.
Absolutely. Another question for a student: how are registration times assigned to incoming students? So we kind of touched base on this a little earlier. So basically how it's done right now is special populations like honors, Office of Disability Services registered students, as well as athletes register the afternoon of one day, and then the second day, all other incoming students register starting at one time in the morning. That is how it has been done in previous summers, and I'll just give the caveat that with everything going on, I'm not sure exactly how it's going to be this coming summer, so I'm going to make the assumption that they're going to be doing something very similar to that. But just stay tuned. That, again, that will be posted on your My Madison page. If you are an incoming student or a parent of an incoming student, your student will be contacted by their advisor in early June. They will also get their enrollment time in early June as well. And that is when you will get more details about how that will work in that process. Okay. I've got a question from Maya. I'm currently taking dual enrollment classes. Does the GPA from my community college carry over to JMU?
No, it does not. So GPA at your community college does not impact JMU. We do not accept courses that you receive below a C in though. So that's important. But no, it doesn't impact JMU. Also, one of the things that I want to say about people that are with like dual enrollment, IB, so this is more for like incoming students. If you have those things, your high school transcripts is not what we need. So if you are taking dual enrollment, we need your transcripts from the community college. If you're taking IB or AP, we need you to go to those sources and send us your transcripts, your test scores from those. Versus just high school, we don't accept that as the equivalency.
There was a clarification. Dual enrollment classes do not satisfy general education requirements. That is not, I think, what Aaron was saying. As long as the dual enrollment classes are at an accredited institution through the high school, and you send in both like that community college transcript and of course your final high school transcript as needed by the university, then that it will be evaluated by the university to accept credit. As was mentioned earlier, there's a really great resource on the registrar's website, and you can just go www.jmu.edu/registrar, and it's one of the first links. It's called the Transfer Equivalency Guide, and you can look up any institution that we've accepted credit for before, and you can see what class you took in high school, and you can see what it comes in at JMU. So just to clarify, your dual enrollment classes most likely will transfer as credit if they were previously supposed to have been accepted before. All right, hope that helps. If not, keep asking questions. We've got a question from Griffin. I'm a business major and intending to declare, but I also have 2 other majors that I'm interested in. What advice would you give on switching majors if I want to do that?
Oh, okay. Like I can give general advice. I feel like I need a little bit more of a specific conversation. With the College of Business having so many progression standards before you can enter into your major, pretty much if somebody's trying to pursue that, I encourage them to be taking College of Business courses, except those core courses. If you're considering something that's a complete pivot from College of Business courses, that's where I feel like we would need to talk. So I could be like, okay, do you need to take one course that goes this way, but continue to walk towards College of Business, or are there classes that potentially overlap? Like we were talking about a few minutes ago about like, if you're considering College of Business and PPA, the Public Policy and Administration major, well, they both require economics. So how can you work with that? But I think that question might be something that is better answered on a one-on-one basis, which I'm sorry.
But we'd love for you to schedule an appointment with either your advisor or with an advisor through our handshake system. Always welcome to do that. We're doing virtual appointments through phone and Zoom, and also via email if that works the best for you. So we've got our last question because we're ending the time that we have with you all today. And it's, what happens if I miss my enrollment appointment? What do I do?
So
go ahead.
No, Lindsay, you got it, girl.
So feel free to chime in on this, but from how I understand it, if you're not in at the very moment that your window opens, it's okay. You still have that enrollment period over a couple hours during that day to be able to go in and make your schedule. And even if you miss that particular window, there will be open enrollment, so you'll be able to go back in and change your schedule then. And then if all else fails, if both of those don't necessarily work out, we're hoping that you'd be able to get in during your enrollment window, but you still have all the way up until that first week of classes to still make changes and additions to your schedule. So don't feel like if you miss that window that all else is lost.
All right, well, great. Thank you all for attending this webinar about tea and tips for registration with us. We really enjoyed talking with you. Again, if you're a current student, if you have any questions, please make sure that you make an appointment to talk with us on Handshake. We'd love to talk with you. And if you're an incoming student, welcome to JMU. We're so excited to see you in the summer. And stay safe out there.
Bye, y'all.
Thank you, everyone.
Bye.